Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Android Office Hours, live here from London. Today is the first birthday of Google Play, for those who don't know. So I think it's a good day to have an Android Hangout. So this is Stefan Linsner.
I'm Matt Gaunt. And in the Hangout down here, we have Rich and Nick.
Hey there. Yeah, we're not in the London office today because we've just got back from a trip to Israel where we were at the campus in Tel Aviv, sporting the new Campus Tel Aviv hoodie. Not that you can read it from there.
Nice.
So Yossi down in the bottom corner there, we were actually sat with him about 10 hours ago, but we've just got back to the UK, and there was a lot of good talks on multi-screen applications and multi-screen development over at campus in Israel. What were you talking about, Nick?
Yeah, hi everyone, and I gave a talk on how to design responsive applications on Android. So hopefully people enjoyed that, and I'll be posting my slides online soon, so watch out for that.
Absolutely, I'll be posting mine as well.
Sweet. Fine. So, as usual, the normal disclaimer, we are not announcing new features or product timelines or anything like that. It's purely to answer questions and help out wherever we can. So we've pretty much got a full house already. So has anyone got any questions in the Hangout? No.
No question from the Hangout? Okay.
So you want to kick off with a moderator question?
Yes. Okay, we have a question down here on using the crop intent or using a customized one. Yeah, I think it's a difficult question because if you have used the crop intent before, you might have noticed that it will not work on all devices, and I don't know how official it is, but if you want to use it, you should make sure that you have kind of a fallback option to what you're doing. So you can use the crop intent, but you still have to have a fallback solution if this is not working. So
I'd be have stronger guidelines than that and say it's actually not a documented intent, right? So it's well known, but it's not actually a guarantee to be there by the platform. So while you could try and use it, like you're saying, it's not guaranteed to be there. A better approach might be to copy the functionality from the gallery application and do it yourself.
Or do it on a server side. Even that might be a good idea to do.
Well, you probably want to be able to resize it on the client side, right, and choose the cropping area, and then performing the actual crop is trivial, right?
Right.
I mean, all the code's there in the gallery app. It's all open source, but you know,
yeah, I think
it's going to be there if OEMs modified their version of the gallery or so forth.
Which is exactly what's kind of happened with the question. Like they're saying that their one particular device just doesn't work. It comes back with something weird. I mean, I think you also got to think if you can get away with not involving the user at all, that's also another viable option. Like I've had applications where we needed to crop an image just to make it square, and 9 times out of 10 you didn't really need to get the user involved. So yeah, think of a different way of doing it, I think, is the way to go. Should I just jump in right with the difficult one? I'm going to do it. So we had a question, can Android destroy stopped activities of an app if it's still in the foreground? The doc suggests it can, but Hackbot replied that it wasn't necessarily the same case. And essentially, what Diane Hackborn's kind of stated is that if you have an application in the foreground and then you keep on creating activity after activity, essentially you'll get to a point where you'll run out of memory and the activities won't be cleared because the application is in the foreground. So essentially the best way to get around this was to start using fragments, and essentially that way you can start managing memory itself because you're essentially able to swap out the fragments and remove them, etc. And sort of managing things that way. And I think it's slightly ambiguous in the documentation in terms of whether the activities will be cleared when they're just in the background, even though the application's in the foreground or not. And I think that's where the confusions come about. So yeah.
But you have to be very careful if you're running in the foreground and creating activity over activity over activity. I think this is kind of an architectural problem. This is also why Diane said use a fragments API, because you don't want it to create a new activity every time. Or what you can do is you can handle a task stack. You can use flags like single top and refresh the views, refresh the adapters. Yes, but I think this is how you should approach.
Yeah, I don't.
But this is how you generally should approach these things. So, and to note, if your application's in the background, the framework will be able to kill your activity, but not if you're running in the foreground. So.
Yeah, and that was from Ite. And originally I posted a comment, and he's rightfully come back saying, given that it's Diane Hackborn, if Diane Hackborn says it's true, then I definitely take her word over mine. Yeah. Next muffin. Stefan might get it. When do you think the ability to reply to comments will be added to all developers? So again, this kind of falls neatly under the we're not announcing new features, etc. Google Play have given it to some developers, but ultimately I think the move to have comments be backed up by a Google Plus profile means that you could reach out to users if you wanted to help them out directly, but at the moment there's no news as to what the Google Play team are doing with that feature.
So
okay, I'm going to jump straight into the next one. By the way, if anyone has another question anywhere, then feel free. If you've got, oh, Stephen, have you got a question in the moderator, or? Yeah, he has somewhere.
Which one?
He's linked to it as well. Also, if anyone's got any favourite apps from the first birthday celebrations that they've been downloading, it'd be good to hear about them. There's movies, books, applications, games, all for sale at the moment in the Play Store for the first birthday. The Play is One celebration.
Yeah, your question was the one with the UI Automator, I see. Yeah, we still don't have any news on that. I saw you open up a different one. It should not happen, like I said last week, but we don't have an answer for you ready. I'm sorry. Yes, should we take on the private API key question?
Let's do it.
Yeah, this is also something that's very sensitive, I think, because you should obviously protect your API keys. So what should you do about it? There's a couple of things you could do. There was, in general, if you want to have a read, there's a blog post on the Android developers blog on securing passwords, and maybe use some advice from there and apply it to secure your API key. But in general, you should think about how sensitive is it to protect your API key. In general, do you have to pay for your API usage, and how important that it leaks or not? But in general, you should protect it. The Android system, of course, you should always use the flag private to store the API key internally. Of course, on rooted devices, this will be accessible, so you can, if you really have to protect your API key, you can do some kind of root detection. I also posted a link on a utils class where you can do root detection last week. This is something you can use to detect root and only run on non-rooted devices. If this is something you can do. Yeah, and you obviously, I don't know, what's your take on it? You can do lots of things.
Yeah, I think generally you've got to think how hard do you need to actually make it for someone to get the API key, and I think that's going to be dependent on the use case essentially. I think the way a lot of companies will get away around this will be to do a combination of server-side support as well as client-side, which the blog post kind of covers the client side of it. So yeah, I think generally there's going to be certain methods that are going to work better than others, but generally it's a case of how difficult you need to make it for someone to then not be interested in getting at the API key. So yeah, it will all depend on the scenario. Yeah.
We can further investigate on what is kind of the best practice to do it on different levels of secure your key.
Also, the more recent API keys now also require a package name to be associated with. So the Maps API, for example, your API key can only be used by you because it takes your signature and your package name. So for our APIs at least, we're now securing them through that mechanism as well. Other people's APIs may not use that, but it is actually fine to put things like the Maps API key in plain text inside your application.
Yeah.
But other developers can take advantage of that same infrastructure, right? You have the ability to verify back-end calls. So that's exactly what the Maps API is doing. It's a way to verify that the traffic is only coming from a certain package. So if you wanted to, you could route something through a server off device and use this the Google Play Services token to verify that it's only coming from your application, that isn't some random web traffic.
Yeah, I think if you search for cloud endpoints on Google Play or Google Plus cloud endpoints, you'll find it on the API console.
Nice.
Okay, very
Whilst
nice.
we're talking about things on the API console, actually, it's worth mentioning that last week a new feature launched which now allows you, if you use Google Plus sign-in on your website, to have the Install Now button for your Android applications. So users can install your Android application from your website directly onto their device, as if they were in the Play Store. You don't need to forward them to the Play Store anymore. It's part of the Google Plus sign-in, as I say, and you get some great metrics through the Google Plus platform insights as well. So have a look at developers.google.com/plus, and then look for over-the-air install. And it's not actually the install button; it's part of the sign-in process. Allows the user to install your application. Kind of cool new feature.
Added some more work for me to do to my website now.
But if you've got
Can I ask a question?
If you've got Google Plus sign-in already, then you just need to add the app package name into the script that's already there.
Nice.
So it's just a tiny bit, and turn on the API feature in the API console.
Cool. So, Nick, we got a question for you. In the last Android Design in Action, Nick mentioned that they rarely recommend to use dialogues. Why is that? I think it's a useful way not only to get input data, but also show a relatively small amount of info that doesn't really fit anywhere in the app, so about 2 to 3 lines.
Yeah, my general hatred of dialogues is just due to their blocking nature. It really disrupts any flow you might have within an application. I just think if you can display something in line, like 2 to 3 lines could be given in line somehow, or some inline user interface element that you don't have to go through like an explicit dismissal or anything like that. And it's just, I find that's better.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think one of the most obvious use case for a dialogue is when you're in the middle of a sign-in process, you've got the username, you've got the password, and then something fails, and then it comes up the dialogue saying error, something doesn't work. It's much nicer if you just show a message above the actual form, so that way they can edit whatever they want to do or retry there and then. There's no, by putting up a dialogue, you're almost already kind of flagging up the fact that something's gone wrong and blocking them from trying again.
Yeah, so you should only use it in cases where you need the user's attention and you need the user input. But in the other cases, I would suggest there are other things in the framework you can use to notify the user, tell them what's going on. But I think dialogues interrupt user flow, as I wrote on the moderator, and this is why you should be really careful when using them. So, what else do we have?
Can I ask a question, please?
Go for it.
Of course.
Thanks. Is it possible to detect if the app is open from a broadcast receiver?
I think you can. I don't know if it's possible from a broadcast receiver, but what you can do is you can grant for the get tasks permission, and you can from there get the running task. But this is maybe you have to be very careful because you're requesting the get task permission. But I think this is the only way, or I think there are 1 or 2 ways. I did that on another project, but this is one way you can detect if your application is still there and also if it's running. But
what exactly?
In rare cases, because you are obviously going to request this permission, and people are wondering why you're requesting.
What exactly I would like to know if the app is open, if the UI is in the front, and not just if I can find in the task, because the app can be in the task but is not open at the moment.
But
But
I think you can do it with that. Just check on Stack Overflow there. Just type it on Stack Overflow. There are a couple of answers on it. But you can definitely, if I remember correctly, you can definitely do it from there.
I will check for that. Thank you.
We've got a couple of questions on.
And what you also can do, I think one solution is to register a dynamic broadcast receiver, and from then send messages which you can then receive. This is something you also could do, because this broadcast receiver will only be active if you're running in the foreground and have user focus.
Thank you very much.
So one of the questions on the Google Plus stream is, do the menu items on the action bar support the checked state? We tried this, but it seems not to work. From Jens Hall. So to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't support necessarily the checked state, but what you can do is just swap out the icon depending on the state. So essentially, when you've created the menu, it's safe to keep a reference to the actual menu itself, and then at that point use find item by ID, I think it is, or something along those lines, to actually get a reference to that particular item, and then change the icon depending on the state. So that's the best way that I know how to do it. Don't know if anyone else has any other comments on that one.
Yeah, greetings to Jens. I know him. He's a very smart guy.
Another from Robert Rees. Where would you suggest a new developer to start? So yeah, I think Giovanni's already kind of responded to the best place to start, which is the Android developer training site. Loads of tutorials, and just generally helps you kind of go from really brand new developers right through to the really advanced stuff. So that's probably a really safe place to start. And yeah, just start coding, come and ask us questions. Then we've got a load of conversation with Andrew Kelly, the one-man moderator machine, with Rich. So one of the other questions we got on the moderator. By the way, has anyone else got a question in the Hangout?
From the Hangout?
No, still quiet. So, so the question starts off with something we can't comment on, which is, will an update of Google Maps API include long press callback for info window, something like on info window long click listener, or is there any workaround to do that now? I would really need that. So essentially, on the Maps API, you can create a little marker. When you click on the marker, it comes up with a window, an info window above that. What McCann's trying to do is, when you long click on the info window, get a different callback. So Stefan, you've been kind of looking into this.
Yeah, there's no out-of-the-box solution for this, so it's not supported. And if you read through the docs, you will see that the image that is shown, or that the view that is shown there above the marker as an info window is actually not a real view. It's an image. So it's not very interactive. But there was one interesting post on Stack Overflow. To be honest, it's a little bit hacky. I put it in the moderator. So give it a try. What he basically does is he wraps his whole layout for the whole activity. He makes a custom layout, and what he does, he's intercepting touch events. There, he's overriding on dispatch touch event, and then is looking if the touch event actually was on the info window, and when it was on the info window, he's going to manually dispatch the events down to the info window. And so the info window is again kind of a live view. This is what he successfully managed to do, but it's still, to me, it sounds like kind of hacky, and you should have a good reason to do it. Yeah, we've discussed this before. A long press on a pop-up in a map view. I think my personal opinion is you have to have a very good reason to do it. Yeah, but if you have to do it, look at the moderator and try to intercept the touch events and route them yourself. This is what you can do.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. I think it's probably missed out from the API because we kind of intend people just to click on it and then go through to another screen which will actually have all the information and all the features that you can do from that point. So having the long click listener, I don't know. I struggle to see a situation where the experience is going to really benefit from having a long click. But yeah, I'd be interested to know what you're trying to do with it, really.
Okay, what else do we have? Show a good quality of images.
Got another one?
This one I'm just reading through the comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
What you can do is, I don't know where you get your images from, but what you can do is, I mean, you obviously will know the width and the height of the image in your gallery, and to make sure you have the images are always at a good quality. Just fetch a slightly bigger image from the server, and what you also can do is then scale it down so that it will fit. So there are a couple of strategies. I think optimizing images for the gallery is often done on the server side. So you request different representations from the server for different devices. Yeah, but what you never should do is download like very big images and sample them down, and using them with not sampling them down, because this will obviously take a lot of memory. You can download a big image if you don't have a image scaling facility, and scale it down and then put it in the view. But what you should never do is taking a big image and putting it in a gallery. And also recycle your views. So
yeah, so just for reference, that was referring to a question that we had on the Google Plus stream. That was essentially, how do you maintain good quality for images when writing custom gallery implementation? I think just to further what Stefan was saying, like the main approach that I've seen people take is essentially they only have access to really big images, and therefore when you're doing custom gallery, the best solution that I've seen is just to scale it down, store a reference to the full image as well as the smaller one, and then just use the thumbnail within the list view, and then that way you've still got access to the large one if you need it for whatever reason. But you do have to be careful on memory management because you're dealing with bitmaps.
yeah, and Andrew Kelly just pointed out to Giuseppe, this is what I was talking about. With getting the running task permission, you can refer to running app process info, and you can get the importance from there. And this is where you can tell if you're in the foreground or not, but still be very careful when you're using it.
Thank you.
So this is a question that maybe Rich or Nick will have a bit more insight in. So this is from Phil. Are unstripped system libraries available for download to assist in diagnosing Android app crashes below the Dalvik VM? So essentially what Phil's got is he's got a Java application. There's no NDK, and somewhere down in the Dalvik VM there's actually a segfault. And he's kind of posted to a Google Plus link, which then posts to a Google group conversation where someone's actually said they've got unstripped binaries, which then gives them access to an extra set of information. So I've posted a link to the Nexus drivers. Not really sure if that's related or not, but it might help. I don't know. Do you guys have any insight?
Nope.
No, I'm looking through the segfault at the moment. Sometimes you can tell. Sometimes they're commented. You can find out what's going on. But on this, I can't see much at all.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to know what you're doing, Phil, to kind of cause it. I think somewhere along the lines there was an example of using a bitmap in one thread, recycling it in another, and then it...
Yeah, I tried the memory allocation tools. Run a debug off the app, collect the memory usage, and then run it through the MAT and see if the memory analysis tool at the point when it crashes, and see if you can figure out from the memory allocations what's going on.
Okay.
Yes, and Jens asked another question, which I think Rich can comment on. He's asking for suggestions on a webcast recording tool from the device. They want to record their app on the device and showing the video to their customers. So I think you're experienced in recording video from the device, right?
Sure. There's a number of, if you want to record it into a PC or a Mac, there's a number of HDMI recorders. I use a Blackmagic one. I was using one a couple of days ago. It works very well. You get the full kind of 1080p and 720p streams directly through your Thunderbolt or USB 3. So if you have a look at Blackmagic's website, they have a few tools there that work quite well. The only thing to be careful of is that your phone or tablet doesn't have HDCP keys on it. So I think we want to use something like the Motorola Zoom or the Galaxy Tab or the Transformer Prime or a Galaxy Nexus. All these things will work fine, but then as soon as you go up to things like the Nexus 4 and the Nexus 10 and some of the newer devices that support HDCP, the most recorders won't record HDCP encrypted content, obviously. So just be careful with that. But yeah, I'm using the one from Blackmagic and it works absolutely perfectly for me.
A viable alternative, if you can, is to use an emulator or like a desktop software like BlueStacks or something like that, and use some desktop recording software as well. You get quite good frame rates there.
Okay, we have an interesting question, I think, from Stefan from Berlin. He's asking, what's the best approach to migrate a phone app, no fragments, to a tablet app? Okay, this is an interesting question. What's the best approach? I think the best approach is to go over the sequential screens on a phone and ask yourself how will you lay out these screens on a tablet. And after you've done that, you should probably continue on taking each activity and refactoring out every code that has to go from the activity to the fragment. And put all screens in fragments, and then after that you're going to start rearranging it on a tablet. But that's what I would do is I would think about which activities or which views, visible views to the user go where on a tablet, and then I would refactor out the fragments, and then I would do all the rearranging for the phone and the tablet. So you can do it step by step. What can be very helpful when doing it is to using something like an event bus, because it allows you to decouple things a lot, so you can still use the old code while also running a fragment, because everything, the events tend to make code more loosely coupled. So this is an approach I've taken on, which worked very well, because you can still keep the app running and having some fragments there. Yeah, but generally take on the phone code, extract some fragments, and then rearrange it for the tablet version.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Like, I think you just need to genuinely think about how you want to sort of chunk up the logic of the application into fragments, because obviously you're going to want to move them around. And once you've figured that out, start moving those bits of logic you already have into the fragments, and like Stefan said, then you're good to go.
Okay, there's a short question. I'm a newbie. Why don't pages like developer.android.com have no links to examples? What you can do is you can I think, where can you get the sample apps? You can get it from, if you just start the Android tool.
So actually, the important thing you missed out when you read that link is he was talking about the design site, developer.android.com/design.
Okay, sorry.
So they specifically aren't linked code stuff, so they're specifically resources targeted mostly at designers, and they're not supposed to be backed up by implementation steps.
Okay, you're right.
So I think generally with this kind of stuff, when you start looking, so if you're finding something in the action bar that's mentioned in the design guidelines, when you actually then start looking at the documentation for the action bar, you'll actually start finding guides that will explain how to do each particular part that will be kind of referenced in the design guidelines. So yeah, I think they are decoupled for a good reason, but generally the documentation is still there to back it up and help you in whatever way you need to. So I think it's quite a good way of doing it. And like Nick said, it's one of the things, anything that gets designers to start thinking in an Android way when they're not really used to it, is good. And scaring them off with code and certain things like that, like if they're not into that, then it's best to leave it.
Yeah, I think it's good and bad, right? Like, I want all developers to read the design guide, right? And I could see the benefit for having links through to some examples. So I can see the argument. I get it completely where you're coming from. But at the same time, like Matt says, we want it to be completely accessible to non-developers as well, to designers and people who might get scared off by links through to all this stuff. So there's arguments for both sides, and this is the way we've fallen on this argument right now.
Yeah. Andrew Kelly's asked a question. In the absence of... I'm going to ask this one last question. In the absence of being able to use the Google Map fragment inside an app widget, would you see any problems using an image from static Google Maps API instead? I'd like to link to periodical location updates to show places of interest nearby. So Stefan's linked to Android Design in Action next week, which I believe you guys are covering widgets. Nick?
That was yesterday. That went out yesterday.
There you go. We've already done it. So what would you say to this? Because I personally don't think it's that bad of an idea. I think dealing with the densities, it might be a bit of an issue, but I'm sure Andrew can deal with it.
No, it sounds doable. I think just be careful about how frequently you're going to do something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're using static images from Google Maps, make sure you abide by all the relevant terms and conditions and put the copyrights and licenses at the bottom of the pictures. We have a static image generator.
Yeah, no cropping out the logo.
Exactly, yeah, not cropping out the logo.
Yeah, but just give it a try and let us know.
Yeah, cool to find out what you get up to. So, unfortunately, that is our half hour. We have steamed through so many questions, it is untrue. But thank you for joining us and chatting with all the questions. If you've got any more, then stick them in the moderator for next week, where we'll be doing another office hours.
Giuseppe asked one in the comments, which I'm not touching with a barge pole.
Yeah, neither am I.
How long will it take for Google I/O tickets to sell out?
You tell us, it depends. Anyway, thank you everyone.
All right, guys.
And we'll see you next
See
week.
you next week.
Yes, guys. Thanks all.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, we will. Yes.
Bye, guys.